Hello everyone, I'm DonTheCrown, and today I want to talk to you about Gate 3 of the Clown Raid, which is arguably the hardest raid that we have right now, and I know a lot of people are having a difficult time clearing this, and so I want to give you some of the tips and tricks I picked up, most particularly in the mini game section here. Now this is the one raid thing that you actually go practice on your own time, and I highly recommend hopping into Trixian, talking to Beatrice, and come testing this out. A lot of people struggle with these 4 different Marios. We're going to go through them. I'm going to talk about all the tips and stuff for both in the Mario and afterwards. And I'm going to let you know why Mario 4 is actually my favorite, even though a lot of people think that it's the most difficult one. Okay, so starting off with Mario 1, you're going to be able to play the minigame here. Now you will have to use the arrow keys, the left and right arrow keys on the right hand side of your keyboard. And you have 2 abilities, one that jumps over enemies and obstacles, and another which hammers things. Now, your goal is to run through and hammer 3 of the correct color orbs, and you don't want to accidentally hit one of the wrong colored orbs, so you'll just get stunned, which could maybe lead you to die. Also, falling off one of these edges here will also cause you to die. And so what you want to do in Mario 1 is just go as fast as you possibly can, but make sure that you break the 3 orbs and that you survive. And really, if it takes you longer because you have to be a little more careful, and you have to kill more of the things as opposed to jumping over them, that's fine. It's really just important that you survive the entire process and get the 3 orbs. Now, if you don't break the 3 orbs, the person that has this mark over their head will instantaneously die once the Mario is complete. And yeah, that's pretty bad. You don't want that to happen to your team. And so after you pass through, you just go to this little ring, and you do have to press G to interact with it at the end, and you'll be safe. Now, if you are in the Mario 1 or 2 position, it's pretty important for you to be ready to go into Mario, and you're going to want to get about 40% of a bar before the Mario mechanic happens. And you can know when Mario is about to happen because Keiko Seidan does a big pentagram move, and a little fire tower will jump down. Now, you and your team need to eventually kill the fire tower, but for the most part, it is a pretty consistent way for you to go from like 40% all the way to 100%, so you can hop into the minigame. You can also hit the fire tower with your Q ability as you're hopping in, and I highly recommend health potting if you are not like pretty full on health, because you can health pot as a clown outside of the minigame, but you cannot health pot inside the game. Another big mistake that I see a lot of people doing is after they complete their Mario, it'll be like halfway through the stagger check for the rest of their team, and they will try to blitz their way through the saw blades in order to get to the team and help out with the stagger, just do a little bit more damage. And while this can be really good, if you're not used to running through the saw blades for like Mario 1, I wouldn't recommend trying to do it because it's quite dangerous to do, and it more likely is going to get you killed as opposed to giving you a few more seconds of DPS, as all of the souls will disappear as soon as the stagger check is complete. Next up, we have Mario 2. I think Mario 2 is honestly probably one of the hardest Marios, simply because it adds a new factor into it, which is the bullet bill mechanic. So these little guys fly by, and if I had jumped a second later and that had stunned me, or a moment later, you just instantaneously die. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to see where they are or where they're coming from until it's almost too late after you've jumped. And so what I try to do is I look in advance in the layer above me to see if I can see any bullet bills, to see if they're going to be the ones that are flying at head height, or if they're going to be flying at the chest. If they're the ones that are flying at the chest level, you have to jump over them. And if you don't jump in time, you're just going to get hit and stunned. And what I do recommend doing is stopping your forward movement as you're coming close to them, because it just makes it so much easier to hop over them. Especially if your ping's not very good, it might be pretty hard for you to master this, so I highly recommend you get in the training area to test this out. Alright, next up is Mario 3, and I think Mario 3 is probably the hardest, but mostly because I see a lot of people die on this very first jump. What I do is let's come right here, wait till the ball hits the ground, and then I tap jump twice. Now this next level is always going to have 2 bullet bills, one coming up at chest level that can stun you, and the other one coming at head height. It could be, the chest one can be coming from the left or the right, so you just kind of watch out for that. You will be immune to bullets as you jump through though, by pressing G. You can just run right up to this guy and jump right past him, and you don't have to kill him at all. Here, there's a lot of visual pollution going on in the background, but just try to be patient. Next, you have to wait for that first bomb to blow up there. Then you can just jump right past this trio, break this ball here, and then once you stand here, all you have to do is spam the jump move over and over and over again. You might have to kill these guys here, but you can get by pretty fast. Next up is Mario 4, which is my personal favorite. And the first thing you want to do is look to see what this color ball is right here. And I can see that it's not the correct color for me, but I can see 2 yellow balls right away. But I don't see any more yellow balls at this point. But hey, look, it's right over here. Generally, if the very first jump doesn't have the correct color for you, and that very far left ball isn't the correct color for you, you're probably going to be safe to go through the middle here. Now the middle is kind of dangerous because there is a bullet bill that's going to be either at chest or at head height. If it's head height, you just wait for it to go past. If it's chest height and you're on this card here, you can jump from the far right of the card and make it all the way to the left without dying and falling off the platform. And then all you have to do is just jump right through all this stuff and you'll be home free. Another important thing to note is that if you are the 3rd Mario or even the 4th Mario, you really have to watch your meter coming out of the Showtime event. Because if your team has a lot of damage, it's going to be really easy for them to push down to the 80 bars where the 3rd Mario happens. And so if they're a really big damage group, you want to make sure that you get hit by like 1 or 2 of the last yellow telegraphs at the end of Showtime, so that you build up a little bit of meter. If your damage is a little bit slow, you might be safe to go like and not get almost any meter, but you might want to communicate with your team that you need to wait until balls come down. And if you're the 4th person, if your team's really cranking, then you definitely want to get a little bit of meter, but for the most part, you'll be safe to not pick up almost any during Showtime. Now at the start of the video, I said that Mario 4 was my favorite Mario to do. And it's not just my favorite because I think it is relatively easy once you practice it and get used to scouting out for different ball colors, but because of the unique position it puts you in. So when you are in the Mario game, you do not typically have to go do the stagger mechanic at all, and you cannot be locked in the Iron Maiden, which means that if the stagger mechanic fails, which kind of frequently does happen on 4th Mario, you are not going to instantaneously die. By doing the 4th Mario, you put yourself in a safe position where even if the entire rest of your team dies or fails, you can come out and still clinch the entire fight. I've seen videos of supports even completing the fight from this point, and although it can be kind of tight, especially if the damage wasn't all that high before going in, you can definitely still lock it up. And for me personally, I just enjoy the ability to have that challenge. And I've had a few times where I've been left all by myself, and that's just fun. Now the last tip that I want to talk about is moving from the far right to the far left of the room during the stagger mechanic. Now the first Mario is always going to be all saws that kill you with 1 hit if you get anywhere close to them. The second ones are hooks where you can get dragged off and basically fail the stagger mechanic. And the 3rd and the 4th have both. Now it's really important to note that these saws have up and down tracks where all of the saws in that line will always travel up, and likewise there's another track where it always goes down. The ones that go up, if you're running across the bottom of the room, will always spawn in the exact same spots, and so you want to be very careful as you're moving across that you're not standing on them when they spawn. Another thing I note is that for me personally, as I run across the bottom, every time that it feels like I try to run up to dodge saws, I tend to die. And so I tend to only dodge down at all to basically move through the saws. And for some reason, that just seems to keep me alive more. And another thing you can do is you can run along the complete outside of the ring here and just eat fire damage, and you'll only have to deal with the saws that are coming down from the top. So if you're really struggling, you can just pop a swift cloak or something and be able to do it that way. The last thing to note is that for the 4th Mario stagger, you do have to come over and do a QTE on 2 switches that are above and below the clown. And then after you finish the QTE, you do have to activate the switch and pull it before you can start staggering him. Now, if you only pull 1 switch and you have way, you can pass the stagger check this way. However, otherwise you have to pull both switches. These switches also despawn saws that are moving towards your ally in the Iron Maiden, so you want to make sure that you pull these quickly because they are actually ahead of the stagger saw, and if you don't pull the switches fast enough, your ally will die. And that's it for my tips and tricks for Clown Gate 3, especially with all the Marios. Just make sure that when you're going through that you're taking your time, you're breaking all the balls, and you're just making sure not to take too much damage and not to die from falling off. I highly recommend going and practicing all of these different Mario games in Trixian, talk to Beatrice, and it should help you out a lot. Let me know if you have any tips for the other viewers in the comments down below, and come by the stream.